Welcome to the Knowledge for Men show. Your life will never be the same.
Your level of success will seldom exceed your level of personal development.
I want to die empty of regret. I want to die empty of my best work. We don't understand who we are. Instead, we're living out somebody else's narrative.
What one man can do, another man can do. If it's been done, it can be done again.
Being yourself and being your truest, most authentic self in every moment. If it scares you or makes you a little afraid, do it. Follow your heart and your gut.
The first stage, I think, is finding you, like finding out who I am today.
Stuff will not work. You will have things that fail. Success is when you're a happy, fulfilled person. How do you define success?
It's your life, and you are the creator of the movie script that is your life story.
Hey guys, just wanted to offer you a free gift here as a part of being a listener of my show. If you go to kfmfree.com, you can get the top 30 books and top 30 success quotes that every man must live by. So obviously every show we talk about books and we talk about success quotes. And so I've compiled the best of the best out of the last 100 episodes into a short guide. So kfmfree.com and it's all yours. All right, guys, welcome to the show. I'm here with Cade Courtley, a former platoon commander for SEAL Team 1. He hosted and produced the show Surviving the Disaster, a Spike and Discovery International series that's been aired in over 150 countries. And Cade is also the author of the SEAL Survival Guide and founder of SEALsurvival.com and recently victorycoffees.com. We'll dive into that in just a bit here. So, Cade, happy to have you here on the show.
Hey, I'm glad to be here.
All right, Cade, so we start off every episode with a favorite success quote, some sort of saying that the guest has lived by. So share with us what you got.
I live by two mottos. Number one, if it was easy, everybody would do it. And number two, you got to get your ass kicked every once in a while. And why I mean that is it reminds you not only of being humbled, but that you need to continue to challenge yourself almost on a daily basis.
Yeah. So I read your bio. You went through Hell Week twice in Buds. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. So I'm wondering if there's a reason why you got those quotes there. Is some similarity going through Hell Week twice?
Well, for people who don't know, Buds is basically SEAL training. That's that first 7 months that you go through. And Hell Week is being up 6 days straight with a total of maybe 45 minutes of sleep. And that's a total of a period of 6 days where you're constantly hypothermic. You're constantly carrying around this 250-pound raft on your head in a boat crew. And it basically, what they're trying to do with Hell Week is trim the fat. Any of the guys that were there because they read the books, they saw the movies, or they thought it'd be really cool to say you're a Navy SEAL in a bar, Hell Week will make you disappear. And unfortunately, I had to go through it a couple times because halfway through it, round one, I'd been basically getting through training on a partially broken leg that became a fully broken leg. So when you get hurt like that, you have to go all the way back to the beginning of training. So
that's why I did it twice. So how many guys enter the Buds class, and then how many become a SEAL in your class?
The attrition rate has not changed since SEAL training began, and it's always been 80%. So for every 10 guys who show up on day one, you'll get 2 guys who make it to graduation. My class started with 142 guys, and I believe we graduated 27. So, I mean, there's a reason why these guys are getting the phone call, are doing the job. They're knocking it out of the park because training is that difficult. It really is. But there's a reason why, like I said. So,
what do you think makes someone get through that? Like, can you tell? Or, like, what are some of the common characteristics or skill sets that leads one to succeed in that?
You know, I get this question a lot, and they're
right.
like, was it physical? Was it mental? It's 100% physical and 100% mental. Okay, so
right.
Do the math there. But my last year in the Navy, I actually ended up being a senior instructor at SEAL training at Buds. So I kind of did a full circle, and you'd always try and figure out from day one who you thought would make it.
Yeah.
And generally speaking, and this is after 9 years of being in the teams, I was maybe batting 500 because when you look at somebody, you don't know what's burning inside them. You don't know how big that heart is. And I'll give you a real quick story that pretty much will explain this whole thing. When I was going through SEAL training, I had this guy in my class. He was ranked number 10 triathlete in the United States.
Wow.
Okay. Physical specimen. And this guy, he would finish the 2-mile swims while we were only halfway done. He would do these runs breathing through his nose. I mean, it was a joke for him. But this guy got into Hell Week and he quit day 2 of Hell Week because this is somebody who basically had never been physically challenged his whole life. He was just gifted. And when you took away the sleep and you took away the food and you took, and you were constantly hypothermic, it just didn't work for him. But the guy right next to him, Seaman Brown, all 135 pounds of him soaking wet, he had been challenged and gotten his butt kicked his whole life. So it was just another week for Seaman Brown, who, by the way, made it to graduation and ended up being a hell of an operator. So that hopefully that answers your question as far as what's the common trait? Just an incredibly deep desire and probably a little bit of a chip on your shoulder.
Okay. Yeah. It's always something, you wonder, like, what does make someone, there's just been so much popularity with SEALs, with movies coming out, like you said, books everywhere. And there's just a lot of popularity within not just special forces, but with the SEALs specifically.
Which is great because, obviously there's a much greater interest. So you're hopefully getting a better sort of recruit or a better person coming in the front door, somebody who definitely wants it. In the same time, we're getting a lot of guys that are coming from the other services who have combat tours. Like, hey, I did 2 combat tours on Iraq. I did a combat tour in Afghanistan, and now I want to be a SEAL. So you get these guys showing up day 1 who have been there and done that already in other services. So that's great. But I guarantee you the ones, like I said, that, hey, I saw Lone Survivor and I want to be a SEAL, that won't get you through 6 days of Hell Week. It just won't. That'll get you through a couple of hours of getting your ass kicked. And then you're like, maybe I'll just stick to going to the movies.
Yeah. So after you got through BUD/S, like, what would be like the day in the life of a SEAL?
It was amazing. I tell people it's the best job in the world, and for the following reasons. Number 1, every day you went to work, you knew you were going to be challenged. Number 2, you were surrounded by people that you trusted with your life, and I didn't realize how absolutely unique that was till I got out, especially got out and went up and got into entertainment business. And those 2 things combined with always having a mission, having a code that people followed, being surrounded by the very best. It was just amazing. So your average day or your typical day was anything but typical. Today we're hopping out of a plane 6 miles in there at 1 a.m. Tomorrow you're going to end up in a country that you probably don't know how to spell right now. You might be there for 7 months, Hopefully you come back and the family's still around. It is anything but typical other than knowing that you would be challenged and you were surrounded by greatness.
Yeah. Every day was a challenge. Every single day. Like, there was
absolutely
no days off.
Well, look, you can only go so much, until you got to kind of park it for a while. But, if the phone rang, you were expected to be there an hour later. And again, I got one of those calls and I was there and I had just gotten married 7 days prior. And then I had to basically tell her, hey, I'll see you in 7 months. You can imagine how that worked out.
Right. Okay.
But that's the job. And like I said, it's the best job in the world. I miss it.
Yeah. Yeah. And transitioning from your SEAL days, like, what was that like for you? You served overseas was it Iraq and Afghanistan?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you did many, like, dozens of combat missions.
So my story, I got in and I did 9 years active duty, and then I ended up getting out after 9 years. And 2 months later, and during those 9 years, busy all over the place and not in places that you saw on CNN, which was great.
What's the time period when you're serving?
So I got out 2 months before 9/11.
2 months.
I'd done 9 years.
Okay.
And then I, like so many other people, I saw those 2 buildings come down, and I said, I want back in, or I want some payback. I want to be part of this. Unfortunately, I was an officer. The great thing about being an officer in the SEAL teams is you go through everything with the enlisted guys together. It's very unique for the military. And it's just, that's the way we do it because we need to build that team mentality, and there needs to be an understanding. Okay, yeah, you're the ranking officer here, but you've been through everything we've been through, and there's already a sense of like trust, reliability, and stuff like that in the folks that are making the calls. The thing that sucks about being an officer in the SEAL teams is once you hit a certain rank, and for me it was about the 9-year mark, they don't let you go out and play with the boys anymore. They want you doing something more along the lines of administrative, a training. They want you to do your time in Washington, D.C. and start punching those tickets. And I got into the SEAL teams to be a shooter. I didn't have aspirations for being an admiral. So that's when I decided to get out. And basically the transition, like I sort of alluded to earlier, for 9 years, like I said, I was surrounded by just a very, very exceptional group of people that I trusted with my life, and did not realize, wow, that's kind of not what's going on out there in the real world. And that was kind of tough for me to sort of figure out. That, and in many ways, Navy SEAL was my identity. And so I had to sort of go out there and discover the next chapter of my life, so to speak.
Yeah. I could imagine that being a really tough transition from just every day, in the military, especially the Navy SEALs, surrounded by these A players, these like elite special forces, and then you're just out with, in the rest of society in the world here. And, I'm thinking of that quote, you're the average of the 5 people that you surround yourself with. And, leaving that, I feel like it's had to have been a big transition. So what led you to go into entertainment and like Hollywood?
It was kind of random. I would say about 6 months before I got out of the Navy, there was a production in San Diego, which is where I was stationed, and they were doing a bunch of kind of cheesy TV shows. And one of my buddies worked at this production company, and he's like, "Hey, you want to come up and do stunts? We'll give you a couple $100 cash if you can fall down or do fights or some driving sequences." And I was like, "Yeah, sure. That's easy money. That sounds like fun." And that kind of grew into wanting to do more stunt work, which is kind of a natural progression for a guy who was in the SEAL teams. So I started doing some stunt work, and then ended up in Los Angeles, and folks were like, "Wow, you can make complete sentences and you're fairly articulate. Maybe we should put you in front of the camera." And so I started doing some of that. Like the first audition I ever went on was to be a Navy SEAL platoon commander for that TV show Jag, and I got it. And I'm like, "Oh, that was easy." One audition, booked the job. And then soon thereafter realized I sucked at balls as an actor. So I started doing some other stuff. I started writing, and I got a screenplay produced and some stuff like that. And it was fun at the time, but like I alluded to earlier, it was a very, very different crowd. There was not a sense of core values. There was less than zero trust, and the people who are running that business is just, it's a whole different way of doing business than what I was used to.
Right. After you left the SEALs, I just envisioned that you constantly have this like awareness, like, you're out in the field, like you're just always aware of what's going on. Like, what's this person up to? What's he doing over here? If you're in combat and coming back into regular life, like, did that carry with you? Does that even have it today, or? Yeah,
it does. It absolutely does. I mean, and it's not something that I'm necessarily conscious of. It was just as a result of all of the training and then all of the environments I worked in. You're in a shopping mall in the summer and there's a guy with a trench coat on. That doesn't make sense. That's just second nature that you pick up on stuff like that. When I go to a restaurant, I want my back to the wall. I mean, and it's not conscious. It's just, this feels better, which is kind of wild. And I forgot to add on to basically my nickel biography, but when 9/11 went down and I couldn't get back into the SEAL teams as an officer and actually go out and do the missions, that's when I joined this company called Blackwater. And early Blackwater was amazing. And that's the stuff that we got to do over in Iraq and Afghanistan. And Blackwater.
That's contracting, like government contracting, exactly. Security contracting.
I mean, back in the day, Blackwater was simply a training facility out on the East Coast where we would go and we'd do some shooting and driving. And then 9/11 happened, and Eric Prince, the guy who founded and started Blackwater, started getting phone calls from folks like the State Department, CIA, saying, "Hey, could you put together a group of these guys who are fairly current, maybe recently got out, kind of like me. I'd been out for 2 months, but my skills were there." And so we opened up the Rolodex and started calling the guys and put together a hell of a crew of guys. We had all worked together. It was all SEALs. Again, we were all current. But it was very cool because we had a lot of money and not a whole lot of rules. And
this sounds dangerous. So you got a team of SEALs with a lot of money and not a lot of rules.
Well, it was cool. It definitely served the purpose that needed to be served, given the time and kind of given the situation. And so, yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah. So when you're out doing the government contracting, it's great that you're with your same guys. So you kind of have that same kind of camaraderie. You guys are speaking the same language or the same tactics.
Yeah, exactly.
How was that different from when you're in the SEALs in the U.S. Navy versus contracting?
There's a few differences I alluded to earlier. We had the gift of deniability, for lack of a better term. So we were able to go out there and do the stuff that U.S. Mill technically was not allowed to do. And that was great. And then, you already touched on it, but because we all knew each other, we were able to step right back into knowing what guys were going to do given certain situations. The tactics remained the same. It wasn't sort of, there's this hodgepodge of guys and we need to go train together. No, we already knew what the other guy was going to do. But as government contracting continued, the need increased for the number of guys. I mean, the government was seeing they were getting a lot of bang for the buck with us, and they wanted more, and they wanted more, and they wanted more. Well, what happens when you grow too big too quick? Standards started falling, and we all saw it, sort of the original crew, and we're like, we see the writing on the wall, what's going on here? So we all sort of kept that original crew together, went to a different company, but kept doing the same contract or the same job.
Yeah, yeah. So were you one of the first groups of contractors with Blackwater?
Correct.
That's interesting. Okay, so coming back now into the civilian life, so much, such a wild career here. What would you say, you're constantly pushing yourself in the SEALs. As a contractor, you're putting yourself in dangerous situations, so you're constantly expanding your comfort zone. Mm-hmm. How do you do that as a civilian? What are you doing to kind of keep this momentum of being this quote unquote badass?
Well, Andrew, it was weird. I was living a double life. So I was in Hollywood, doing TV shows and being part of films and stuff like that, and in stunt capacity in front of the camera and stuff like that. And then I'd get a phone call and I'd be like, yeah, I'm ready to go. And I would disappear for 2 months. And my LA friends were like, what is the deal with this guy? And then I'd come back with full beard and looking kind of worn out and get cleaned up after a week and go back to trying to do the Hollywood thing and make a buck there. And then I'd disappear for another couple months. So that was wild. But as far as maintaining sort of that edge, maintaining the skill sets, everything we do in the SEAL teams is very perishable. Classic example is I was a sniper. I was lucky enough to go to sniper school and be part of that crew. And if you're not on the long gun once a week, you're going to lose that skill set. So even in LA, the obvious and the no-brainer is physically staying in good shape. But I was going to the gun range once a week and practicing those skills so I could hop right back into the crew when we were overseas and be effective at doing the job we had to do there. The thing about sort of the switch between when you're doing that job and then you're back in, Los Angeles, USA, it gets a little tricky. I didn't realize, like I said, I'd been around, team guys for 9 years, and then I was doing the contracting thing. We're all incredibly, incredibly aggressive, and that's just sort of job requirement. And I would have to remind myself, oh, wait a minute. All right, bring it down about 10 notches. I'm back in Los Angeles. These people have no idea what it'd be like to be in a war zone. You're just going to scare the shit out of them if you start talking to them like you'd be talking to a guy in your crew. And so I consciously literally had to dial it way down so I wasn't freaking people out.
Yeah. Speaking almost a different language, maybe. Yeah. Okay. And then just in your, how do you keep that mental toughness? How do you hold that mental toughness of, just thinking back to doing Hell Week twice and serving, in the SEALs for 9 years, you have a very high level of mental toughness. What do you do now to continue developing that and holding that?
Well, that's an interesting question. About a year and a half ago, I finally sort of decided to hang the guns up and I'd been at it between time in the Navy and time as a contractor for almost 20 years. And I decided, I'm kind of done. I'm good. It's a young man's game for one thing. And it's a matter of, it's kind of rolling the dice every time you go over there for obvious reasons. And until I decided to hang up the guns and stop doing that, I did not realize what it was like to actually be truly relaxed, because my mind was, even back in the United States, was still like, yeah, but I'm going to be hopping on a flight and heading back there pretty soon. I didn't have to think about that anymore. And that's when I realized, oh, wow, this is what it feels like to be relaxed. So maintaining the mental toughness, that's, I try and tell people, I talk about it in my book, in the SEAL Survival Guide, you need to push your comfort zone almost on a daily basis. And that's the discipline. I mean, it really is. You need to make sure that if you're pushing that comfort zone, you will be better prepared when nasty stuff happens. And so I always try to do that, even in my time back here in the United States, whether it was, okay, I'm going to tack another 2 miles on this run. I'm going to put another 20 pounds in my pack. I'm going to sleep a couple hours less, stuff like that. That seems kind of ridiculous, but it works.
I'm not sure if this is a military term or if it's a SEAL term or saying where it's like, train in times of peace so that you bleed less in war, something like that.
Yeah, it's sweat while you're training so you don't bleed while you're in war. And it's very true. I mean, and that's why, unfortunately, we lose guys all the time in training in the SEAL teams, because we're taking it so far to the edge. And the reason why you do that is when you're actually in the shit, it's very familiar. You're like, oh, hell, we were doing this a month ago over in, whatever desert training facility. And you're just able to react and act better when you're familiar with it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. You're training so hard. You train so much as a SEAL. I've just always wondered, like, when you're actually in combat, you're on a mission, mm-hmm. and you're opening fire, does it feel like training? Or does it feel any different? Because you train so much, like, is it just second nature? You're kind of just doing your job, or are you very conscious, like, whoa, this is the real deal. These guys are firing back at me. What is that experience like?
I'd say maybe the first time when you realize that somebody out there is actively trying to kill you, it was almost a moment of pause, and then kind of like a half of a laugh. It was like, oh, that asshole's actually trying to fucking kill me. All right. Okay. And it's like, press on, and then carry on. And then it's just, okay, this is just yet another situation that we train for, and it's familiar, and here we go again. And yeah, you don't really sort of pick it apart until you're done. And then when you're done, you don't want to pick it apart very much. You know what I mean? You kind of like, okay, cool, let's gear up for the next one. And that's sort of the compartmentalization that you need to be able to do if you want to be an effective operator in that kind of an environment.
Yeah, just something curious that I've had. And now your civilian life, like, you've started, like, you did a lot of contracting work. You've gone into Hollywood and done some roles there, and now you have this website, SEAL Survival, mm-hmm. and then now a coffee company. Seems like you're doing quite a bit here. What do you see SEALs doing usually after the teams? Like, what happens?
Any guy who's gotten through the SEAL teams, any guy who became a SEAL and then continued on with combat operations or what have you, could do anything they want, honestly. You can look back, and again, that's why they do Hell Week. It's so difficult, but you're able to use that as a baseline for when you're out there in the future. Well, hey, I was hypothermic up for 6 days, so we can do this 4-day op, stuff like that. It becomes this baseline. Becoming a Navy SEAL is a baseline as well, I think. Hey, you want to go out and you want to race cars, you want to open a restaurant, you want to write a book. Why can't you? You just got through the toughest military training in the world. You made it through several combat operations, and you're still here. So take that same desire that you had to get through all that and put it towards whatever you're passionate about. And that's what I've tried to do here with a couple of different entrepreneurial ventures that I'm currently involved in.
Yeah. Taking a look at some of your stuff here, the SEAL Survival, actually, and then looking at your book too, actually very relevant for what's happened in recent events in Paris.
Yeah, I agree. I've gotten, when I was in Hollywood, one of the last things I did, and you touched on earlier, was I did this TV show for Spike International and Discovery International called Surviving Disaster. And basically what we took 10 disasters that the average person could find themselves in. An earthquake, a mall shooting, a home invasion, a hurricane. And we put this group of people right in the middle of it. And 2 minutes later, I kind of enter the group, and then I'm sort of talking to the folks at home, as far as a checklist of a start to finish, how we get through this. And we recreated all these along with having this little crew with me. And the one I was most proud of, and it might have been because I ended up directing it, but we did one about a mall shooting, which is, I mean, it really is so pertinent to what's going on today all too often, especially, just a couple weeks ago in Paris. And, what do you do when you just thought you were going to go and get a new flat screen and all of a sudden you hear explosions and gunshots? And, it's, I always get that, well, I'm not a combat trained. I was like, look, if you can remember two things, you have a really good chance of surviving. You hear gunshots or explosions, you have to do two things. You have to get down and you have to move. Start with that. You know what I mean? And then we'll work it out from there.
Yeah. So get down, move in that situation, like continue on. So you get down and move. I have a question too. Is playing dead a dumb thing, or is that safe thing? I saw some articles about that because some people survived doing that and some people did not survive doing that in Paris.
Well, look, everything with a disaster is very situationally dependent. Okay. But if I'm going to die, it's going to be on my feet fighting for my life. It's not going to be holding my breath and on the ground curled up in a ball like I'm dead. That's the way I'm going to go out. As far as an active shooter situation, so boom, gunshots. Get down and start moving. A smaller target and a moving target are both more difficult to hit. Next thing you want to do is you want to try and find some cover. Now there's cover and there's concealment. Cover is something that stops bullets, like a big potted plant or a cement bench or a wall. Concealment, it hides you, but it doesn't stop bullets. If you can find a piece of cover, crawl toward that. Once you are behind cover, take a second or two to try and figure out what is the source, where is the source of this gunfire, okay? Because then the next thing you do is you want to try and plan your escape away from that. It would be terrible if you're crawling along, you're doing great, and you crawled right into the guy with the AK-47. All right, so that's one of those cases where a couple seconds could mean the difference between living and dying in that situation. And then, again, situational dependent, but if you have the ability to try and stop one of those attackers, to try and save multiple lives, do it. Do it if you can. Do it even if you have half a chance. I mean, it sounds a little sick, but I've said now for the last couple of years, I was like, oh, please let me pull up on one of these pricks who's out in a parking lot and starts opening fire, on a restaurant. Let me be there. And I'm saying that now, and you watch like a month from now, I'll end up getting capped. And you'd be like, yeah, former guest on our show, Cade Courtley.
Yeah.
But
I was going to ask, would you in that situation, are you armed all the time? You're in Texas, so I assume you're armed all the time.
Yeah, I am.
Okay. Yeah, I think it was I was like, would he actually? And yeah, he would. Yeah, so it's getting out of that situation, and it's a scary thing to think about. And I think for a lot of people, what would happen is like they would be in shock. Like that would be the first thing. Like they just couldn't believe that like this is happening, like kind of the fight or flight.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I'll add one to it. It's fight, flight, or freeze. And for somebody who's just not familiar, you're that guy walking around texting your buddies or sending some Snapchat to somebody and you hear this, you're not ready for that. And that's why I'm always telling people, hey, when you go into public places, put the phone in your pocket for a little while. You're surrounded by strangers in a place that you are not very familiar with. Just put the phone in your pocket for a while. Keep your head on a swivel. Look around. Look for that guy wearing the trench coat that's hanging out in the corner and it's 95 degrees out. It shouldn't make sense to you. And then I always get you're trying to get people to be paranoid. No. I'm trying to get people to be aware. I would never condone living hypervigilant. I would never condone a lifestyle where you're paranoid and constantly scared. I'm trying to get people just to be aware of their surroundings when they're surrounded by strangers and they're in an unfamiliar place.
Yeah. And are you one of those who is hyper paranoid? Like in your house, do you have security measures for every type of situation?
No, I mean, I would say I'm the opposite.
Okay.
I have put together I have a game plan if something happens and it involves different pieces of equipment. in different areas. And okay, I've got that, and I've got the training, and now I can just relax. You know, I'm confident in the fact that I will be able to handle a situation. And so, yeah, like I said, I'm more relaxed now than I've been in 20 years.
Yeah. How does it feel? You said, I think earlier, like put the guns up, kind of like this is a young man's game. I'm going to go on, do these other ventures now, kind of starting a new chapter in your life. Like, what was that? What was that like? What's it been like since then?
It feels great. Like I said, I didn't know what it felt like to truly relax because I had been doing that job for 20 years.
Yeah.
And when I consciously decided, okay, I'm, you know, short of getting a phone call and, hey, we could really use you, I decided I'm all done with that. And that feels great. I do. I'm very proud of the time I spent doing that job, and I'm very proud of the job that I did and the folks that I worked with. And now it's a different chapter in my life, and it's moving on with some other stuff where I don't necessarily have to carry a gun. And I don't mind that at this point in my life.
Really good. So this has been a really good episode, and I want to take it a little deeper here and go into the knowledge round. So just going to ask you some rapid fire questions here. So Cade, you ready for the knowledge round?
Bring it.
All right. All right, guys. If you're not reading books, then you're getting left behind. Somebody spent their entire life learning some invaluable lesson, and the best format that anyone could ever put it in is a book. It's the shortest, fastest, simplest way to consume content. So I know there are so many books available, and we talk about books all the time on the podcast. So there must be so many running through your head, and you're wondering, where do I begin? Well, I've compiled the top 30 books and success quotes from all of my guests in the last 100 episodes. So you can get them all for free. If you go to kfmfree.com, you can simply download the top 30 books that every man must live by. Again, that's kfmfree.com. Welcome to the Knowledge Round, where the guests will be asked rapid-fire questions to give the audience invaluable pieces of wisdom to help transform their lives. Starting in 3, 2, 1, showtime. All right. So this next question here is about someone who's lost or doesn't really have an idea of where they're going or what they should be doing. Like, what advice would you give to someone who's feeling lost or unsure of their purpose?
What I would say, number one, is you got to stop the pity party. If you're feeling sorry for yourself, that's not going to help you at all. Number two, start doing something physically. Start exercising, because that's going to make the stuff inside feel better, and it's going to make you feel better on the outside. And then number three, sit down and figure out what you're passionate about. It could be cooking. It could be flying airplanes. It could be landscaping. It could be what have you. What do you love doing? And then go after that. If you're passionate about it, you'll work hard at it. The money will come. You'll be very good at it. If you're spending time trying to chase the paycheck or doing something that you really don't like, you are wasting valuable time. So find your passion and then go after it. Do not quit.
I like that. Really good. And Cade, what would you say was holding you back from becoming the man you are now today?
I don't think anything held me back. When I was going through training and I broke my leg, I had decided I was going to be a Navy SEAL or die. That was it. I did not have a plan B. Being a Navy SEAL was my passion, and I was going to do whatever it took, whether that was 2 hell weeks, whether that was running around on a partially broken leg for 3 days and feeling it every step. But that was it. I was so absolutely focused because I was so passionate about becoming a SEAL. And it worked for me. And I guarantee you, folks, if you find something that you are that passionate about, you'll make it happen, and you'll be happy as hell doing it.
Yeah, really good. And how many miles would you say you ran on a broken leg? That just kind of hit me. You said every step, you felt the pain.
So it happened about 2 weeks before Hell Week. So we were averaging about 50 miles a week in SEAL training. And then in Hell Week, you add that boat that you're carrying around on top of your head. So there's an extra, if you divided it up by the guys, there's an extra 50 pounds bouncing around. I mean, you talk about pushing your comfort zone. It was every freaking step until it just let loose. It was like, and you're done.
So were you whispering anything to yourself in the back of your head when you're just feeling that pain? Because other guys are suffering too, but they don't have that broken leg.
Well, it was just literally not going to quit, not going to quit, not going to quit. It just was not an option. It wasn't. So it was literally, I'll make it through Hell Week or my leg will break. Which is going to happen first? Well, unfortunately, the leg broke first, but got through round 2. So
yeah, you seem like a burn your ships kind of guy. Like it's like when you want something, you're going to get it. Like that's it.
Yeah, and given that job, that was a perfect fit. That's kind of the way it had to be in that job, because it was a very extreme job and it was black or white. You're a SEAL or you're not. You're on a mission. It's success or people die. Black and white. And in a way, I find that to be a very easy way to look at the world. Now that I'm away from that job, I've had to realize that I'm living in a gray world where that doesn't necessarily work. And I've had to understand and learn patience, compromise, different approaches, vice the, straight through the door head first. And that's been an interesting adjustment because, like I said, I'm living in a gray world right now, and a lot of what really helped me and gave me a lot of success in the SEALs and contracting does not apply to this new gray world I'm living in.
What about like that discipline? What about like that hard work and that kind of the mental toughness has got to? Yeah,
that will always serve you. I believe it will, especially as an entrepreneur. Here's what I love about being an entrepreneur. My success or failure is all based on me. There's nobody else making the decisions. If I work an extra hour each day, then I have a little bit better chance of success. So I love that responsibility. It's all on me. And so, again, that mental toughness, the discipline, stuff like that served me well in the SEALs. I hope will continue to serve me well as I'm working with these 2 different companies that I've formed. So some of those basic traits and core values, I think, will serve me for the rest of my life. But like I said, I've had to tweak the
your approach.
The approach and the presentation has had to have a major modification. So, and again, that's my new discipline now, is the new approach in this world I'm living in now.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you name a person who's had a large impact on your life, like a mentor? Who is this person and how have they impacted your life?
Well, I've got a couple. My family sort of split up when I was 13 years old. And at that point I was the man of the house, and that's an early age to take on that responsibility. And then, God bless him, I had an amazing stepfather who really sort of showed me, when a kid's that age really needs a really good positive role model. And he was that guy, and I love him for it. And so my stepfather was a major one. And then I guess I'd say the other one was when I was going through SEAL training, there was a warrant officer there who was one of the instructors. And I wouldn't say he took me under his wing, because he he gave me extra attention, and that's the kind of attention you don't want when you're going through SEAL training.
Right.
But at the same time, and I got a chance to chat with him after training, and he basically said, look, I saw something in you, and especially you being an officer, I was going to make sure you earned it, but it served me well. And his name was Tom Rewerts, and Tom was the guy who's like, hey, you broke your leg, and normally we would get rid of you at this point, but I fired a silver bullet for you and wanted to bring you back. And he was great. He sort of taught me how I was supposed to be a young officer and how I had to take care of my guys. And again, it was through a lot of extra push-ups, but I really appreciate every minute he dedicated to making sure I was going to make it through SEAL training and try and teach me how to do it the right way.
Yeah. And what are you, 22, 23 when you're doing this?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's got to be just a massive responsibility. You're a SEAL officer at that time. That's just got to be a lot.
Well, yeah, and it was great. It was amazing. And, I tell people that they're always talking about, what was the coldest you were, or most tired, or any of that was the hardest part. And I said to him, I go, look, I feel like I kind of had it easier than some of the other guys, because of the fact that I was in charge. If I showed any inkling of weakness, they were going to see that and they were going to lose confidence. So I didn't have the time to think about how cold, how tired, how sore I was. because I was too busy making sure my guys were okay. And so as a result, like I said, it felt like it was almost a little bit easier. I didn't have the time to think about how much pain I was in because I was trying to make sure we had all the guys and we were doing the right thing and I was making the right calls. And so in that regard, it was almost a little bit easier having that additional responsibility and making sure they never saw me tired, cold, whining, etc. There was no room for it.
Yeah. Otherwise, that's how they're going to feel. And it's just going to be like everyone's going to start feeling that.
Well, yeah. And I never wanted to look into the eyes of one of my guys and see somebody who was not confidently looking back at me. You've lost him then. You're done as a leader, especially in something like the SEAL teams.
Yeah. What would you say are two of your most influential books that really been big aha light bulb books for you on your journey?
Well, shameless plug would be the SEAL Survival Guide that I wrote, but I can't go there. That's a really good question. I read an amazing biography about General Patton, who I had always sort of looked at as like, wow, an officer who kind of did it the right way and was abrasive, but all he cared about was the mission, and I always thought that was awesome. And then a second book, there's this one called A Slow Walk in the Sad Rain, and it was kind of about these guys that were in this very remote sort of camp in northern Vietnam. So like they were just out there on their own. There were maybe 6 of them, and it was this fire team and just all the crazy unconventional stuff that went on. Like they had limpet mines out front, and then the next night somebody just snuck in and turned them around. So they had to spray paint one side so they knew which side it was, and then they spray painted the side the same color. And it was just kind of the insanity of sort of that sort of thing in a combat situation. But, that crazy unconventional, you're on your own sort of thing. I love that book.
Yeah, really good. I'll have to check some of these books out, put them on the wish list. And this next one's really a scenario. And I really like this question. It's a big fan favorite question. But imagine you have 60 seconds with your 20-year-old self, 20-year-old Cade, if you could just envision where he's at in college. Mm-hmm. What would you tell him to do and what would you tell him not to do?
I would tell him to shut up and listen more. Honestly, I would just be like, shut up and listen more to the guys who have been doing this longer. I was incredibly aggressive, and that's really, really good. But once you get out of SEAL training, especially as a young officer, that's a really good time that first year or two to listen to the guys who have been doing it for a while. Save the aggressive stuff for when you need it and when it makes sense, but shut up and listen. And stay away from strippers. That's probably another smart one.
There's usually something with like a girl or something gets thrown in there. All right.
Don't get married before you deploy. Yeah, that would have been a really good one.
Yeah, how close was it? Like a couple weeks?
Oh, like 7 days later.
7 days later. Okay.
Gone for 7 months.
All right.
That never works.
I don't think so. All right. Now, looking back over this interview, even if you have to repeat some of the same things, that's completely fine. What would you say is your philosophy on life and success?
Look, I'll go back to what I talked about earlier.
Okay.
If you feel like you're lost, you don't know what you should do with the life, even if you're starting a third career, stop and figure out what you love. What are you passionate about? And then go after it, because it can all be over tomorrow. And wouldn't you be pissed off if you spent the last 5 years in a cubicle? For me, that's the biggest one. And you hear it all the time, seize the day, make every day count. You could have been in that concert in Paris. So make it count. I mean, really, make it count, because you never know. And nothing would suck worse than to catch that bullet in the skull, and in the afterlife you said, wow, what did I accomplish during that time down there? Not much. That would suck.
Yeah, definitely. To be able to look back over your life and be like, that was a wild fucking adventure. That was an awesome time. Like I don't think I would have done things differently. Like, to be able to say that, to really live and put it all out on the table.
it's a really good reminder for me now. I'm in my 40s now, but I don't want to stop challenging myself. I don't think anybody ever should. And it's going to be different challenges. It doesn't have to be staying up for 6 days straight with a broken leg, but it still needs to be something when I wake up in the morning, I say, okay, stay hungry, keep going, keep challenging yourself, because look, I had something that happened to me when I was younger that I thought was a major turning point in my life. When I was 17 years old, I got a phone call one night, and it was from a buddy of mine, and he told me 3 of the guys we had just graduated from high school with had been murdered. A guy who had escaped from a prison came upon my 3 buddies. They were up target practicing outside of Boulder, Colorado. He acted like he was a park ranger. He said, "You guys aren't supposed to be here. Lay down on the ground, put your firearms away." He grabbed one and shot 3 of them and killed them right there. Just like that, they were gone. And I took from that something I carry with me still to this day. You never know. So make it fucking count.
Yeah. Just soaking that in. And that's going to conclude the knowledge round there. I think that was a very just powerful episode. And, just to chime in on that, I think really like the death of man is boredom. Like if you're bored, you've died.
I agree. You might still be walking around, but you're wasting space.
You're just consuming food. And you're just keeping your body running, but your mind is dead. Yeah. And that's, in my opinion, I feel like that is much of many of the majority of men today, unfortunately.
I agree.
And that's what this is about, is it getting guys like you on the show who've had these wild adventures and who've learned so much on that journey, and just sharing it with a lot of these guys here listening, the thousands of guys listening. So really, really powerful episode. Cade, what's exciting you today now? Like, what's getting you out of bed in the morning?
Well, it's kind of crazy, but now when I wake up in the morning, I say to myself, how can I sell more coffee? I've started this coffee company about 4 months ago called Victory Coffees.
Yeah.
With an S.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. What's this about?
Well, look, we're an all veteran operated. So I partnered up. So it's a Navy SEAL and 2 Marine infantry officers, and we have set this up kind of using the same business model as, I would say, Dollar Shave Club, where you can go on there and you figure out what kind of coffee you like: dark roast, medium, light roast, espresso, decaf, and you decide how many cups of coffee you drink a day, and that shows up at your door every month. And I'm not allowed to say this, but I'm going to go ahead and do it for your audience. It's the same stuff they're drinking at one of the big houses that's white, and it's in Washington, D.C. Our coffee is that good. So give us a try. You're helping out a veteran company, and if you don't like the coffee, send it back to me. I'll give you a full refund, but I guarantee you're going to love this stuff. So go check out victorycoffees.com and give it a try.
Awesome. Checking it out right now. Looking really good. And also you have sealsurvival.com, which is all about survival life. And, I think I read, where did I read it? But, you want to be the dominant force in the kind of the survival space. Yeah, no, I've had Seal Survival up and running for about 4 years now. And that was sort of as a result of coming off of the TV show, The Surviving Disaster. Right. And then writing the book, The Seal Survival Guide. There was this big need for, hey, how do I get a hold of you for public speaking? What are some tips for this? And so I put all that together on this website, and then also have a signature product line of go bags. And if anybody doesn't know what a go bag is, it's basically that thing that you have under your bed, you've got one in your car, and you have one at work. And when the shit hits the fan, it is an arm's reach away. You grab it, and you're on the run. And you have everything in that bag that's going to keep you alive and fighting for your life for the next 24 to 72 hours. I offer 2 different types at sealsurvival.com. And right now, for your folks, if they type in coupon code ALPHA, ALPHA, they get $50 off of the Go Bag Alpha. And honestly, whether you buy mine or not, folks, have one of these things. Look at what's going on in the world. Be ready for this stuff. Don't say this will never happen to me. Say to yourself, when this happens to me, I'll be ready for it. Yeah, and it lasts forever. And what's inside there? It lasts. Okay, great. All right. Well, Cade, this has been just a phenomenal episode. It's been really good getting to know you, and learned a little bit about your what was it? Oh no, that one, you were in the SEALs at that time, but that little scruffle with some of the guys in my fraternity is pretty funny.
Some of the guys.
Was that you? Who else fighting?
It was 5 of us against the entire fraternity.
What started the fight?
Okay, so you guys, and I'm saying you guys meaning your fraternity. This is in San Diego in the late 90s. So the 5 of us, we just got done with this training trip. We were having a beer, and apparently your president was wasted, bumped into one of my guys, spilled his entire beer on him, and then just kept walking. And I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Hey, hit us with hey, I'm sorry, or my bad. But not even a my bad.
Yeah.
And let's just say we were a little pent up after doing that. All we wanted to do was go out and blow off some steam. Our version of blowing off steam became a 5-on-40 in the middle of the intersection outside of the Beachcomber.
Yeah.
And you guys kept coming out of the bar and kept coming out. It got so bad that one of the bouncers came out and was helping us out because, I mean, come on, yeah, we're Navy SEALs, but 5-on-40? Come on. It was like Knuckle Junction. Stuff flying everywhere. We were like back to back in this little halo in the middle. And look, some of you guys went to the hospital, but it wasn't my fault. You can thank the president for that one. Man.
Yeah. That's funny. I'm going to have to chat in. Yeah, that would be my fraternity, but I was in high school at that time.
Okay,
or I was much younger at that time. Let's put it that. I don't even know where I was.
The future Sigma Chi's weren't coming out of the bar too. I mean, it was literally this flood of students. I'm like, come on, really? Like wave 3?
All right. We'll put a cut here. This was more personal talk there, but Cade, thank you so much for coming on the show, sharing your story, being vulnerable, life lessons here with my community. It's been invaluable. Thousands of guys listening to this here. We thank you for that.
Hey, it was my pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Knowledge for Men podcast. Hundreds of interviews and 1 million downloads later, we're continuing to build an international movement, and we've just started. So if you enjoyed this episode, go ahead and leave a review in iTunes. It really helps to grow the podcast. Guys, 2015 is the official year of living with purpose, where every day you do only the things that matter to you. You wake up, live with purpose, and take massive action towards the life you want. Check out kfmfree.com to get free tools I've created to help you crush life. Again, that's kfmfree.com. This is your host, Andrew Farabee, and I'll see you in the next episode.